Hey, Zaka family! Zaka is launching an exclusive membership platform to provide you with career development workshops, coaching, community, and so much more. Go to ZakaConnect.com and sign up to receive information on how to access early registration and perks. Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you can get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today, our guest is Afiya Addison, who is an independent agency lead at LinkedIn. Afiya, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul. I'm happy to be here and I'm excited to be here.
The pleasure is all ours, Afiya, and I think that LinkedIn is a platform in which a lot of our listeners potentially do have or have heard a lot about, obviously. And I know that there's a lot of great things that you could express about the benefits of obviously having like a LinkedIn page, or even just more importantly, being exposed to like the whole LinkedIn community. It's beautiful. You know, all those connections that are out there, you know, whether it be jobs, opportunities, you know, people looking to advance in their career. So before we kind of like dive into the whole LinkedIn movement and what you got going on over there, could you kind of tell us a little bit more about your background and like where you grew up?
So I am from a loud Trinidadian family, a big Trinidadian family. I grew up in Hackensack, New Jersey. And yeah, I mean, I'm a Jersey girl through and through. I spent a little time in New York, growing up in like upstate or Spring Valley, New York. Some people call it upstate, but it's not really upstate. But yeah, I mean, I love my culture. I love that both of my parents are Trinidadian. I grew up eating roti. I grew up eating bacon saltfish. In fact, I literally had my mom come over a few weekends ago just to make me some roast bacon saltfish. So definitely still in touch with Trinidadian roots. But also I'm definitely like a Black American girl. Like my favorite genre of music is like hip hop and R&B. No, I'm still American. Like I can't even front, but that's a little bit about my background.
Well, I like that. Like, first off, representing Trinity to the bone. I know that's a big thing. And I know carnival season and all that is always a big thing for you guys out there. So dancing, music is, and the food coming from the Caribbean culture is always a big thing. Now, you said New Jersey, right? You said Hackensack?
That's correct.
Now, tell us a little bit about growing up in your childhood. Like, how was it in Hackensack? How was like the diversity, the community? Did you feel like you guys were the only Trinidadians in the area?
Oh, definitely not. So I was very blessed. I was very blessed to grow up. I think I mentioned between Hackensack, New Jersey and Spring Valley, New York. And Spring Valley, New York, I call it like the land of Haitians. There were so many Haitian people. Yeah, right. Sapase. So that made me super comfortable growing up with, even if they weren't Trinidadian, just other Caribbean people who understood like, oh, we're from the Caribbean, we make different foods, like our families have rich cultures. That was definitely helpful. And then I moved to New Jersey around like high school time. And two of my best friends are Trinidadian. My two high school best friends, I should say, are Trinidadian. And honestly, I think I got lucky just because there's not a ton of, well, there is a good amount of Caribbeans in New Jersey, but I got lucky that both of my best friends are Trinidadian. Like it just happened. And honestly, like I said, I consider myself like a Black American girl in terms of like listening to hip hop and R&B with that connection to my Trini roots. So I describe them very similarly. Like we have a strong connection to our Trini roots, but we all kind of, are on the same page in terms of just being American, or I should say being Trini American.
Oh, okay. That's a new one right there. I didn't hear that before. I like that, Trini American. Now, tell us a little bit. I know you talked about your parents being Trinidadian and stuff like that. Could you just tell us a little bit, some of the things that you learned from your parents that you still apply today?
Oh, absolutely. So you mentioned food, you mentioned Trinidadian have a rich culture of dance and music. I think those things kind of make me who I am. I'm a person who loves exploring different cultures and different foods. That's actually one of like my favorite things to do, check out new restaurants in whatever city I'm in. I think my parents played a huge part in that. Just being Trinidadian, having rich, diverse foods, right? Because in Trinidad, there's Indian people, there's Asian people, there's Black people. So I think all those different cultures combined and made a really rich experience for my parents as they were growing up in Trinidad. And so I was able to, I think that passed down to me, and I was able to experience great restaurants with my parents, and they just opened up my world of food. Same thing with music. Even though I'm not listening to like soca every day, I think just my mom's obsession with listening to music all the time, and I definitely feel like it comes from her Trini background and her Trini roots. You know, her favorite artist is definitely Machel Montano, right? So
yeah, I think he's a favorite for a lot of people in the Caribbean.
Exactly, right? So just growing up, always hearing her listen to, but she would also listen to like Gloria Estefan, and she would also listen to Luther Vandross. So I was very influenced by that. I always have music playing in the house. My husband's probably tired of it at this point, but that's just kind of who I am, right? And then the last thing I'll say in terms of, aside from like the cultural influences of just them making me who I am, is that my parents definitely instilled to always have confidence in myself. My dad, when I was younger, he would always say, you know, you're an Addison, make sure you show up in the world like an Addison, you're confident, you know, and that stuck with me. I really value my family for instilling that in me. And this confidence allows me to come on shows like this and speak to you, Paul. And this confidence allows me to go on stages and present, you know, LinkedIn marketing solutions or whatever I'm talking about, whether it's like a rock your profile session for LinkedIn or I'm talking about advertising. It allows me to move in the world and be who I am with a level of confidence. And I'm really happy that they instilled that in me.
Well, I think that's a valuable thing, that when you have parents that are obviously helping you to navigate at a young age, you know, sometimes if you don't have any type of guidance, you got to find it on your own. So you were definitely lucky to have a mom and a dad that kind of like gave you that Caribbean lifestyle culture, but at the same time you were still out there finding your roots and your culture in your own way, being an American as well. So I think that navigating through both of them, you kind of like molded yourself into this individual that you are today. And that's a I think that's a great thing when, you know, you find who you are, you know, because obviously our parents could always be like, I need you to be this and be this. And especially being a Caribbean culture, you know, parents are like, you're going to be a lawyer, be a doctor. You're going to do exactly what I tell you to do. But, you know, I'm glad that you were able to find your way through that.
Absolutely.
Now, what did you want to be when you were growing up? Like, obviously, you know, being in the Caribbean culture, I know like sometimes, you know, it's kind of predestined, like you got to be this. So like, what did you want to be?
Paul, I don't know if you heard me laughing when you said lawyer or doctor, because you already know my parents.
Yeah, right. Come on now. It's funny that when it's always like that, but parents never had a law book in the house, had a doctor book in the house. They want you to be it, but there's not one brochure or pamphlet in the house that tells you how it. You just got to be it. That's bottom line. So let's talk about that.
Exactly. My dad always thought I was good at arguing and defending my brother in arguments. And he said, you should be a lawyer. My mom's a nurse. And they just thought that I was like a caring person. And they were like, you should also explore being a doctor. So it was definitely those two things. But what I wanted to be growing up, I wanted to be in media. I wanted to be like a singer or I didn't know what you called Oprah at the time, like a talk show host, but I wasn't sure like what she did, but I wanted to be like a TV personality, I guess. That has definitely evolved. And I am in media, I'm glad to say, but I don't necessarily want to be on the front lines and everyone knowing my name and face. I definitely see that there's pitfalls to that as well, being in the public eye. And so, yeah, I think I just followed my heart and I kind of was like, okay, you want to be in media, but you also want to have this professionalism, this business aspect. I shouldn't say professionalism, but like this business aspect to it. I wanted it to be something that my parents respected. And not to say that those jobs are not respectful. Absolutely not what I'm saying. It's just that, you know, sometimes old school parents, they're like, you want to be an artist? You want to be a singer? What? So I definitely took the route of media in business, and that was advertising. And that's how I ended up where I am today. But originally I did want to be like Oprah Winfrey.
Okay, shout out to that. That was someone you were looking up to, I'm assuming, at that point in time in your life.
Absolutely. I remember I did.
Shout out to Oprah.
Yes.
Oprah done changed a lot of people's lives out here in the game.
She sure
You know, it's one of those things where I think a lot of people, you know, especially Oprah being of color, I think that was a face, like the mother figure, you know what I'm saying? That really was like everyone looked at and been like, yo, she is so successful. And Oprah has definitely done a lot for her community. So looking at someone like Oprah is definitely a great thing to kind of like use as like a staple for you. Now, when this was all going down, you're like, okay, media, advertising, marketing, you know, personnel, TV personnel. Like, I know I read in your bio that you went to like Wesleyan College, which is like considered one of the best liberal art colleges in the United States. Why did you choose? That's the question now. Why did you choose to go to an all woman college? And like, what was that experience like?
That's a great question. I did go to Wellesley College. I have a lot of love for Wellesley. It was the best school I got into, to be completely honest.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents, you know, being Caribbean parents, they were like, "You're going to go to the best school you got into." But there was definitely an element. I was what you would say boy crazy when I was in high school. And so there was definitely an element of me feeling like, okay, if I go to Wellesley College and I surround myself with books and women, that I will be safe. So there was some of that as well, but I'm super, super grateful for the experience because being around all those intelligent women was like a once in a lifetime experience. It definitely shaped me to be who I am today. Just seeing everyone grinding so hard at their individual passions, it made me realize that I needed that level of grind. I needed to have an end goal, a passion. I wanted something to work towards. And I think Wellesley definitely helped get me motivated to do that.
Mm-hmm. Now, going to that school, like, did you feel like you were around a lot of Caribbean culture?
Yes, that's a great question. What I loved about Wellesley is that they had like different student groups. And so immediately once I got on campus, I was like, where the blacks at? Like, where is the black house? And so they had a house called Harambe House. And in Harambe House, it wasn't like a living community, but you could just go and gather in that space, do your homework there, you know, make food there. It was like a really chill space for Black students, and or I should say students across the African American or African diaspora. But within Harambe House, they had different groups, and one of them was called Wicked Women for Caribbean Development. So luckily, I definitely had a good amount of Caribbeans still around me, and two of my best friends from Wellesley are Caribbean. And so it's like kind of a theme. I end up just getting Caribbean friends, even though I don't even consider myself like super Trinidadian or super Caribbean. It's just I end up with these Caribbean friends because we have things in common.
True. And that's always good to have someone that, you know, kind of like understands your culture and like how you move in a certain way. It's always good to have those types of similarities. Now, going to an all-woman school, right? How did you find a way? Like, as a matter of fact, how did that empower you by being at all? And I know you said that there was a lot of like influences while you were there, but like, how did it empower you to start your career?
That's a great question. Just seeing how hard everyone was working, right? So a lot of these women had come from prep schools because Wellesley's a really great school, right? So a lot of these people who are going to Wellesley are coming from a really strong prep school or some type of pre-college program that prepared them. I had none of that. In fact, I was in a program at Wellesley that was for communities who who didn't necessarily have all the resources. So they basically felt that I might not be as successful. That's how I felt at least. And they put me in a group.
I got you.
Yeah, they put me in a group with other students so that I can get that like one-on-one attention. And I'm grateful for that group because that's where I met some of my best friends. But I would say that just in general, Wellesley was a place where everyone's working really hard to figure out what they want to do in life, figure out who they want to be in life, figure out what the legacy they want to leave behind. And being at that school absolutely motivated me. Just seeing others doing that and how serious they were about it and the steps they took and the actions they were taking to make change in their lives, like that absolutely motivated me to say, okay, what do I want to do with my life? What legacy do I want to leave? You know, and that's how I ended up where I am today. I actually saw this woman at Wellesley in Photoshop making ads. And I was like, what do you do? It seems really cool. And she was like, I work for an advertising agency. And that was literally the start of my career journey. I asked her about what she did at the agency. She put me in touch with someone from MIT, which is where my husband went to school. Talked to the MIT guy a little bit about his work at the agency. He referred me to that agency and I was working there the next summer.
Now, when it comes down to like, what was like that big challenge for you? Like when you graduated after college, like, you know, starting your career, like trying to get your feet wet, like you finally finished, you're like, okay. And what was like a thing that you didn't prepare for that you had to learn along the way?
That's a great question. Honestly, I didn't prepare for the racism. I think maybe that sounds silly because as Black people, we kind of are expecting it or ready for it. But even when you've experienced it in one space, when you go to a new space and you experience it, it's still shocking. So I think honestly, like I started my career in Boston. It's not the most diverse city. There were definitely a few times I felt incredibly uncomfortable because of things people had said to me at work about my Blackness, or just making me feeling uncomfortable for being Black. And I definitely wasn't prepared for that. I remember calling my mom and dad one day after work, bawling, just like really upset because one of my coworkers had said something to me on the train that really had offended me. It was about, you know, me being Black. And so, yeah, it's just, I could have never prepared for that. I don't think anyone could really prepare, but I think parents and teachers and, you know, people who care about you in your life are always trying to tell you about that moment that's going to happen, as, you know, if you're a person of color. And when it happens, it's always just hard to deal with. So I think that was something that I didn't really feel prepared for, and it was hard to deal with.
Jeez. Now, as growing up in the Caribbean, well, not growing up, but having that Caribbean culture, I know one of the biggest things that, you know, a lot of our family members teach us, we have grandparents as well. I know being kind and being respectful, right? That's like one of the principles sometimes. You got to be kind to everyone, be respectful. How do you make sure that people don't take advantage of all the great things that you have to offer, especially being in corporate America?
Oh, I struggle with that every day. If I'm being honest, I think, yeah, as women, as Black women, especially being from a Caribbean family, like you're absolutely right. It's been forced and imposed on me that I should be this meek and mild, respectful young woman. I think the good things for me is that my mom, even though she may be described as meek and mild sometimes, she is very open and very honest about her feelings. My dad is a loud Caribbean man, so you know what he's feeling immediately. So I think having those parents empowered me a little bit to be like, okay, I can fight against the grain a little bit, even though they had been telling me those things. They were the ones telling me to be kind and respectful, but I still saw how they acted every day and was like, okay, I need to be that way. I think the experiences my mom told me about. So growing up, my mom would be very open about her experiences in the workplace. My mom's a nurse, and she would talk about, you know, being blindsided by certain things her colleagues did to her, or her colleagues trying to undercut her for another position and things like that. And I think, honestly, that made me hyper aware that it's a dog eat dog world and you got to be out here grinding for yourself. And so I still struggle with it. I definitely still try to be my authentic self in the office, because I just told someone the other day, I'm like, I don't think anyone in my family would describe me as being like meek and mild, or maybe not meek and mild is the right word, as not super assertive, I should say. But in the office, I do think a few people would describe me as not assertive, and I don't want that anymore. I want to be the person I am at home in the office. I want to, the way I'm assertive with my husband and my family members, I want to bring that to the office. I don't want to hide parts of myself. And so it's something I struggle with every day, but I think just seeing other Black women in the office trying to do the same thing, seeing my mom struggle with it her whole life, it's something that I think I'm always going to be working on.
And are you like assertive now and more aware of like when you were talking about not preparing yourself in regards to like racism and things like that?
Absolutely. And I think some of that just came with time. I've been in the industry for 10 years now. So I think just getting used to it. Some of it was just getting used to it and getting over it. But also some of it was building that muscle. So absolutely, I just entered a new role, and in my new role, I'm already like, okay, what am I not going to put up with? Like, where am I going to set boundaries and make sure people don't try me? And so I think it's really important. But yeah, I'm definitely learning to be more assertive, and I'm still working on it, I'll say.
Well, you definitely are an Addison. I'll let you know that the way you're speaking right now.
Thank you. My dad would be really happy to hear that.
That's right. Come on now, Dad, I got you, because you coming at it, right? And like, look, I am like, and that's very important. Like I was mentioning before, like, you got to find your groove. You got to find your niche. You got to find who you are. And, when you deal with certain situations like that, sometimes that can knock you off. Like, seriously, you could be like, you know what, I'm not good enough. I don't have a voice, or I don't need to be assertive. And you miss out on a lot of great opportunities, and people take advantage of you. But, you're constantly working on it. And I'm glad that you can admit that too. Like, some people are like, oh, I already got it. But then still they be getting bullied and picked on, if anything like that. But you're like, no, it's something I'm working on. It's taking me some time, but I know it's something where I need to be, and I think that's very important to know where you got to go. Because at least at that point, you can start creating that road plan, that map to success. Could you tell the listeners, the audience, about your current role? I know you were starting to talk about a little bit more about your current role in LinkedIn, and what do you do?
Sure. Well, I'm an independent agency lead at LinkedIn, specifically for LinkedIn Marketing Solutions. So we have multiple lines of businesses at LinkedIn, and I'm in the Marketing Solutions line of business, which means that we sell advertising on LinkedIn. And so as an agency lead, I partner with different independent agencies who have multiple clients who might be spending on LinkedIn and buying those ads on LinkedIn. So I work at that agency level to ensure that the agency is getting all the support they need from LinkedIn, that they have a good partnership, that if there's any other strategic initiatives like executive engagement, events, education, that I can help provide and be there for them to, help them on that journey. So that's a little bit about what I do. In my day-to-day, I'm talking to agencies, sending them resources, looking at my numbers, making sure I'm going to hit my quota. So that's kind of my life.
Now, how do you operate? I mean, what's keeping you motivated working at such a large place like that? Like, LinkedIn is a massive company. I mean, you could get lost in it. That's the case. Like working for Amazon, like, how do you not get lost?
That's a great question. I think one thing about me is I've always been super friendly. So I'm really good at meeting new people, and I put myself out there because I just don't like not knowing people. It feels weird to me. And especially because I've been here for so long. I've been here for 8 years. So when there are people I don't know, I'm like, who's that? Like, why don't I know you? Let me meet you. And I have a level of comfortability because I've been here for so long, even in this space, right? Like, I've been coming to this office for years and years. So there's just this level of comfortability that I have introducing myself to people. Relationships is really why I've been here. My last boss, we had a fantastic relationship. Her and I built a lot together. I really enjoyed the work. And that's what kept me here. Just having great people in my corner who are supporting me, who are giving me opportunities. My new boss is all for me. I love, how supportive she has been of me, and how she wants to understand not just the professional side of my career, but like, what are my personal endeavors and how can she help in that area as well? So the people at LinkedIn have been really great.
Mm-hmm. I mean, from what I've heard about LinkedIn and some of the guests who have been on the show, they've talked about LinkedIn, whether working for LinkedIn or, having it as a platform. And they say it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's an amazing platform. How did you start at LinkedIn, and like, in a sense of like becoming a leader there?
That's a great question. So my journey started at an ad agency. So I started an ad agency. I knew I wanted to do something closer to like talking to large groups of people, engaging large groups of people, motivating people. So I thought I wanted to be like more an employee engagement, HR type role. And so actually that's how I got into LinkedIn. I applied to like HR recruiting roles and I ended up being a recruiting associate. I think what I said before in terms of just meeting a lot of people and being very friendly has taken me a long way. I will acknowledge that it's not everyone's superpower, right? Like not everyone's really good at just going out their way to talk to people. So if you're listening to this, don't feel pressured to do that, but have a plan. Be strategic. Who are the people that you do want to talk to, who you do want to get to know a little bit better, right? And so I did that a lot at LinkedIn. I would be like, oh, I'm really interested in this person's role. Let me figure out what they do and talk to them. And so that's how I got on my last team. I just was talking to people, figuring out other types of roles. And through those informal interviews, basically, I was able to secure my last role. In that role, I essentially was the face of LinkedIn for many ad agencies because I was doing education for ad agencies in the beginning part of that role. And so I think that helped build my confidence, just traveling to a bunch of different companies across the country and, presenting to them. I had to have a level of confidence and, I had to know what I was talking about. I had to project that confidence so that they can retain the information correctly. So I think that definitely helped me kind of build just like all the relationships that I had throughout the company, just going to those different companies externally as well. And then lastly, I'd say just being involved in different programs at LinkedIn. Like I've been involved in the Rock Your Profile program, which helped me go to a bunch of different organizations and help them with their LinkedIn profiles, right? Being involved in Black Inclusion Group at LinkedIn helps me connect and network with other Black people in my office. And so I just think I've been here for a while. I've used my voice and leveraged my voice to advocate for myself. And I've been lucky to have really strong people in my life and at LinkedIn specifically who have advocated for me. And so I think all those things combined, I just kind of continue to rise in the ranks, and not to say I'm like at a managerial or director level. That's not it. I'm an individual contributor, but I am a leader at LinkedIn because I have been here for so long, and people do look up to me for certain things. And I think just my experience, my breadth of knowledge, and the way I interact with people has made me who I am.
Mm-hmm. Now, being at LinkedIn for so long, I mean, you work several different positions at LinkedIn. Like, how do you navigate and transition from like one role to the next?
Yeah. Well, it's always a little bit of an exploration phase, like a discovery phase, right? Because it's like essentially I'll just get tired of a role. Like, sometimes you're just tired of a role. You're like, I've been doing this for too long. Or sometimes you have an issue with your manager or an issue with the person you're working with. Like all those things have kind of happened to me, right? And so that's usually an indicator to me that it's time to move. By the way, I think some people will stay in those situations. As soon as that happens to me, I'm like, okay, so I'm on to the next. I don't need to stay in a situation that's not serving me. And so when I make those moves, it's about talking to people. A lot of the time, I'm like having those informal interviews or informational interviews, and just asking people what they do. And it really helps when you're talking to someone who's at your company, right? Because you already have a leg up. You're like, hey, I already work at LinkedIn. Can I just throw lunch on your calendar and let's meet for lunch and talk about something? So I think those like relationships have helped me transition really easily. Like, for example, into transitioning into my current role, there's definitely a learning curve, but I knew pretty much everyone on the team because I've been here for 8 years. I've worked with them all before. So no one was like new to me, and that felt very comfortable. So I think, just having strong relationships, and then just remembering to give yourself some grace. There are some good resources out there that help you. One that helped me a few times was this book called The First 90 Days. I think it's a great book. So just remember some of those things if you're not a naturally social person or you're not, it's been a while since you've been in a new role. That book really helps me remember, like, okay, I should check in with these people. I should have one-on-ones with these people. I should maybe make a few allies, like things like that. So I definitely recommend that book to folks. But if not reading that book, just, don't be shy, try to put yourself out there, try to make those relationships, because that's what helps you get those new opportunities.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, I like how you kind of worded that and put that. I know that obviously the listeners value things like that. Now, being obviously when it comes down to immigrants, I know with people of immigrant background, I know one of the hardest things sometimes in corporate America, from a lot of the times guests have been on the show, is a question that comes up or a concern is like, how do you battle asking for a raise or a promotion? Now, granted, you doing your work, sometimes people would notice it and then you would hope that you would get promoted or get a raise. But sometimes, how do you advocate for yourself when someone's not doing it for you?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. And to be completely honest with you, Paul, something that I'm getting better at. I think most recently I've been feeling better at it, but it's hard. I want to first acknowledge that it's hard, especially when you've been a Caribbean person who's been told to mind your manners and respect your elders, or a woman who's been told to, not ask for too much and just be grateful, or a Black person who's been told to just kind of stay in your lane. Like all those things are me, right? And so it's hard to get the courage because a lot of the times they will try to say no, or they will try to be like, you're already at what you're at. But it's important. It's important because you need to continue to build that muscle, because you're going to have to do it for the rest of your life. You're going to have to advocate for yourself and defend yourself for the rest of your life. And so you need to build that muscle, and you need to ask for the things that you want. And that's what I try to remind myself every time I'm going into a new role or a new position. And I'm like, oh gosh, it's the money conversation. I'm like, no, Afiya, remember your worth, ask for what you want, and back it up, whether that's research online, whether that's talking to a few other friends and asking them like, hey, like, do you know what salaries are looking like? A lot of the time people are scared to talk about it. I find that it helps when you share what you're making first, and then they'll tell you what they're making in return. But yeah, just have some of those conversations. And to be completely honest, a lot of the times, even if you don't have a lot of evidence to back it up, still ask, know your worth. And guess what? They're not going to fire you or say, we're not going to hire you because you asked for more money. The most that they will say is no.
Yeah, true. I mean, we would hope the words they would say is say no, but you are right. I mean, if the worst they could probably say is no, or we don't think that you're the person or the candidate for it. And then, but the good thing about it is that now what they're looking for possibly, because that would be my next question, but hey, look, I don't fit the description now. What are some of the things that you need me to do to fill those shoes? And then you have the answers to the test. And if they don't if they don't give you that raise or that promotion after you have done all those things, then, it's a different type of conversation. But as long as because that's very hard. You can't advocate if you don't know what you're advocating for.
Absolutely. And I'll say just know your worth. Like a lot of the times these, you might think it's the dream opportunity, but if they're not going to pay you what you want to be paid, then it's not the dream opportunity, right? And so know your worth, weigh the options, and think about what's right for you, and don't be scared. I'm saying this for myself as well, because I definitely get scared when it's time to ask for more money or time to talk about, my accomplishments, but just have that confidence and ask, right? So that's what I like to say.
Now, when it comes to like mentorship, why is that important to you? I know you were talking about that a little bit earlier within the interview about some of the things that you do at LinkedIn, but like, why is that important to you? And like, how did you decide who to seek for like advice?
That's a great question. I've been blessed in my career to have people who just kind of looked out for me. Early on, when I started at LinkedIn in marketing solutions, there was a woman in the Toronto office who kind of took me under her wing, was always there to support me, made sure, if I had questions, she was there to answer them, made sure if I had hard situations to kind of walk through with my manager, she would do those run-throughs with me. So I've been very blessed to have people who were looking out for me. And once I realized that I got that same guidance and that's what helped me, I made it my mission to help others. So whenever people are like, hey, Afiya, can I get time on your calendar? Just 30 minutes, especially if they work at LinkedIn or like a tech company, or if they're a young Black woman and I feel like they need some help, I'm absolutely down to talk. And so mentorship is really important to me, because I think that's a lot of the time how you learn those skills, how you learn those nuances. We live in a crazy world, and there are a lot of things that we might not know because our parents are immigrants, or because these things were just ingrained in Americans, but we're from Trinidad or we're from Jamaica and we don't know these things. Like, talking to people is how you learn those things. So I think mentorship is so important, and I think just passing down the skills that you've learned is just it's invaluable.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, it is very, obviously very valuable. I think something that I want to kind of ask you, which I've been thinking about, is like, I know you get invited several times to be a part of a panel, like be a panelist, right? And you get to talk and express these things. Like, where do you get the level of confidence to do that? And why is it important for Black women to, like yourself, to represent on stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, shout out to my parents for instilling confidence in me and just to telling me to go forth and do the thing. So shout out to them. But I'll say from other Black women, like from seeing other Black women in the room, watching me, listening to me, shaking their heads, cheering me on, from having other Black women and women of color in my corner saying, you got this, sis, you can do this. I think that's definitely what's helped me take on those scenarios with ease and just be like, okay, this is something that I want to do, I'm excited to do, and I want to show other people that they can do it too. So yeah, I think just like other women definitely help give me the confidence, and for sure my parents. If I ever need a pep talk, I can always call them.
Mm-hmm. Well, always remember that you and Addison. You and Addison. I like that line. Like something, being in Addison, what is one of their proudest accomplishments so far?
Oh, wow. I haven't thought about this in a while. I'd say one of my proudest accomplishments is helping one of my family members get out of a bad situation. So it's not even necessarily related to work. I don't know if you were asking me professionally, but personally, it's about help. It was one of my family members was in a tough situation at home. They needed to get out the house. They didn't have anyone to talk to. They talked to me about it in confidence, and I helped get them out of that situation. And just looking back on that time, I was pretty young. I was living in a different state. I was living in California. My family member was living on the East Coast. But I remember how much I rallied to get my family together and do something about this. And I was like, she needs to get out the house. We can't let her stay there anymore. We need to make change. And I'm really proud of that because I think I impacted her life by doing that. I think I helped her get out of a bad situation. So that's one of my proudest accomplishments, just as a human being, just like mm-hmm. giving back to my family.
That's I think that's one of the things where, like, anybody that comes from like the Caribbean culture, your family, it always says like it takes a village to raise a child, or a community, right? So when you finally get an opportunity to give back, it's like it is an accomplishment. I know sometimes people might be like, well, the accomplishment is monetary, me getting a raise or me getting this nice car, this house, but just giving back to the people who helped you in the start of your journey is probably one of the most rewarding things. And that's something that, even myself, being parents coming from the Caribbean as well, being able to give back to my mother or father and, to my siblings, if that's the case, and, toward their kids, like, it's always a great reward to see that is something, so I admire that you out of all the things you could have said, and you got a lot of great accomplishments under that belt. I'm glad you said that one. I know my last question to you, I know that you've been doing a wonderful job in regards to like answering all these questions and giving like some really good understanding and valuable information for our listeners. But, a lot of young girls look up to you, being, who you are, your reputation, your growth, your knowledge, how you empower yourself and empower other people. They look up to you as a mentor now. What is like the best advice you would give to a young Black girl who's starting off in her career?
The best advice I would give to a young Black girl starting off in her career is I would say, don't ever change up for anyone. Be yourself, be you. And if the organization that you're in is not seeing you for who you are or valuing you for you, then it's time to leave the organization, find somewhere else. Find a space that you feel safe and you can be your authentic self as much as possible. I know it's hard. A lot of these companies are, capitalistic companies that are here to make money, and it's hard to kind of think about bringing your own emotion and your own personality, but being you is going to help you have that confidence. It's going to help you always remember what your values are and speak up for those values when it's important to you, when you see that there are changes that need to be made. And so it may sound corny, but I want young Black women to be who they are, whether that's you as the anime, watcher, you as the violin player, you as the painter, like whatever you do, however you show up, continue to show up in that way and don't let people make you feel like you're not good enough.
Sometimes the hardest thing is just showing up.
Exactly.
And showing up like with the intentions of being seen, the intentions of being heard, And I feel like, with all your experiences that you have gone through in your life, it has gotten you to a place right now where you're able to get back and empower other people, whether it be women, men, people of color. I feel like your personality is something that's very vibrant. And I think, a company like LinkedIn is it really is an honor or a privilege to really have someone like you on the team, working with them, because you could tell from this conversation, or I could tell that, you love what you do. And more importantly, you love helping other people be successful. It's something about that. And even when you said like just helping out my family member was like one of my biggest accomplishments, that just goes to show the person that you are. And I know your parents, from the stuff they instilled in you from an early age, it didn't go away. It's still there. And you're using it every single day. So congratulations to your mom and your dad, your Trini background, because Trini to the bone. And growing up in Hackensack to where you are right now, congratulations, on all your success. Thank you so much for blessing us with your knowledge, information, your presence, and just giving our listeners an opportunity to really empower themselves with the words that you have shared with us tonight.
Thank you, Paul. And Zaka is lucky to have you as well, because you're an amazing host. And I'm happy to be here. And I would love to do this again. Let me know if you want me to come back and talk about anything else.
Ooh, okay. We might have to get on this talk show together now. That's what we need to do, because you said TV personnel.
Make me a co-host.
We might have to pull up on some like, look, let's just get on. Let's hit Oprah up real quick, right after this. Right. And be like, Oprah, yeah, look, we finally knocking on your door. We know you kind of retiring, so we trying to like jump in,
Right? It's the perfect time.
Well, it's an honor to meet Addison, and I thank you so much for being on the show this evening.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Again, to the listeners, if you want to hear more inspirational stories like Afiya, please check us out on ZakaConnect.com. Follow our social at Zaka Connect, and follow our feed Zaka wherever you listen to your podcasts.